Well, good morning, family. It is another awesome day of which God has woken me up, and we get to have a morning conversation about education. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Jarell Lee, who is founding director of KIPP Academy Primary in Chicago, Illinois. It's a school built on values of love, joy, and community. Prior to moving to Chicago, Jarell served as the school leader of KIPP New Jersey Life Academy and as assistant school leader at KIPP New Jersey Sikh Academy. So he's got a background in running schools and leading schools. But more than that, the important thing for us to have the conversation about today is he has a background in understanding educational success rather than failure. And one of the things I've been really interested in for this particular show is to focus more now on educational success rather than failure, because I've gotten tired of studying Black failure, tired of studying what can go wrong, studying how bad the system is. And we just need stories from real people who have not been born with a silver spoon in their mouth and had everything handed to them and still made successful. So Jarell is a Harvard graduate, and the moment that I hear that, one, as a parent, I think, woohoo! Some parent was happy at some point somewhere, because that in all of our imaginations, that's the brass ring. That's like the top rung. But I also, like, the moment I hear that, often have assumptions that means that a person was privileged in some way, shape, or form in life, because you don't just get there just through hard work or just through agency yourself. It's part of the mythos that you get there because you had some sort of advantage or leg up in life. That does not seem to be true in your situation. Good morning, brother. How are you doing?
Doing as well as I can be today.
Yeah, I saw you with the babies and with the kids.
Yeah,
Brings me back to my time. You are at the beginning of the cycle yourself, so now you get to be
exactly. Exactly.
get to be a parent. So listen, I read about your story in a book that was doing exactly what I'm saying right now, studying success, studying what it takes, what's in the black box of parenting, what can be done, what can we do as parents to make sure that our kids have a better life than we did, especially educationally speaking. Can you tell me just a little bit about, of the different things that I read in your story, like going to the library, having a mother who was involved, studying flashcards at an early age, being part of Head Start, these different things, which are the ones of those, when you've done your own self-reflection, do you think rises to the top as most responsible for you making it through and becoming successful in education?
I think one of the biggest things that my mother really did was she instilled a belief in me, a really high expectation belief, right? So one, she told me that if I wanted to do anything better with my life, then I would have to do well in school. Um, so, and she told me that when I was 5. So I
Mm,
didn't have any other expectation for my life. I knew I had to do well in school. She told me, she said, "Hey, you see that we're struggling. You see that we don't have everything that we would like to have. You want something better? This is your option." And so, as a young child, I thought that was the only way. So I didn't really consider any other possibilities other than doing well in school. And it was never a conversation of if I could, because she told me that I had to. And then everything that she did leading up to that just reinforced the belief that I was able and I was capable. So throughout life, whenever I would run into any challenges, um, already thought that I already thought that I was capable. I already had those high expectations for
mm,
myself, so I was
mm-hmm.
able to continue to push through. And it was never a second thought. It was never afterthought of could I do something. Um,
You know,
and
when I
we,
was reading the story, I was wondering where it came from in her, even that she had such a drive and a belief. You just said she set
Mhm,
high standards and she had a belief and made you believe.
mhm, mhm.
Where'd that come from for her?
I really don't know. I think she just really wanted. She just reflected on her life, um, and knew what was possible, and she wanted something better for me. Um, and she didn't always know what that was. So I remember vividly when it came time to apply to colleges. Neither one of us knew anything about the process at all. And she would go to the library and she was taking out books to like learn about colleges and learn about the college application process, because she wanted to make sure that she had, taken two steps into that process before I even got there. Um, but she had that she had that she instilled that drive in me on,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is the I don't know what the ceiling is of war. I don't know what the next level is. But I know if I can push you there, then you can figure that out. You can do better than I can.
So amazing that in reading the story, it just felt like she was not going to take no for an answer, no matter what your circumstance was, where you guys lived,
Mhm.
what school to put you in or whatnot. And I love the idea that it's not a story where she had all the answers already, where she knew how to, but the two of you were going to figure it out together. At some point, she's doing all this work. She's looking for jobs, looking for housing, looking for work. You're going from shelters to shelters, and she's being really active. But at some point, you take over in your own learning because you like things like math and science and things that are a little bit out of her range. Tell me about like what it feels like to start feeling like you did in those moments, like I'm figuring something out that even my mom and my parents aren't figuring out, so it's native to you.
My relationship with schooling was always a little interesting, right? So we in kindergarten, I went to a school for the whole year. We had a house, and that was my first experience with school, right? And then we didn't have a house, and we were moving around. So in first, second grade, we were in 7 different homeless shelters because you can only stay in a homeless shelter for so long. So the only thing that was consistent in my life was not a school, not a neighborhood. Only thing that was consistent in my life was, my mother and the fact that I was learning. So I really held on to learning because that was the one thing I had, right? I even lost some of my childhood toys. I remember a Ninja Turtle truck that I would like wonder where it went through all the moves. Um, so I latched onto that and I held on to that. School and learning was the thing that was most important to me because really, in my eyes, that was the only thing I had. So when it came to like me learning math and science, like I love that because I kind of get lost in that, and really focus on learning and not focus on everything else that was happening. Not focus on, what happened to my favorite toys. Not focus on what happened to, that friend from first grade that, I really built a relationship with who I didn't know where they were anymore. So fast forward, because I had been focusing on learning so much and my mother had been working with me, I started to get good at it. And I started to make straight A's, and my family and, folks at church, they started to praise me and celebrate me for it. And it became my identity that I would, get these good grades. And that's what people want to talk to me about. What's on my report card, how well I'm doing. And that became a part of who I was, or who I saw myself as.
Mm, mm-hmm,
Now that
mm-hmm.
eventually changed when I got older, and I realized, that it didn't matter the grades that I made, right? Based on society, society had already outlined a pathway for me based on where I grew up in Cleveland, based on the fact that I was a little black boy. So they already had tried to put me in this box and down this pathway, and I realized it didn't matter what kind of grades that I made. That wasn't going to get me off that track.
Mm, mm-hmm.
That was a different story. That was a different lesson I learned further down the line when I was in high school. But leading up into that, I thought that was the only way to be. I thought that was the only way to go.
So early on, school is it's one of the more consistent parts of your life, so you gravitate towards it because of that.
Mhm.
At the same time, you have other adults in your life who are expressing how smart you are. Like that
Mhm.
becomes, I love when you just said it became part of your identity. Because for me, as a parent, want that to be my kid's identity, but sometimes it doesn't always happen, right? Like, so one, oh, you're the one who can speak well. So, once you start telling a
Mhm.
kid those sort of things, they start believing it and they go with it.
Mhm.
What happens later? So, what happens later in your life that your self concept of being the smart kid who gets good grades now is challenged and has you start thinking other things?
Yeah. So let's talk about middle school. Um, so in middle school in Cleveland at the time, all the children that were in the gifted and talented program went to the same school, a school called Whitney Young. All of us who went to the same school. And I went there, and it was great, right? It was the first time I had been at a school for 3 years. I made friends, folks that I still talk to this day. Now this is middle school. You can't really see how tall I am now. I am not that tall. And in middle school, I don't even know if I broke 4 feet. I don't know how short I was in middle school, but I was small. I was tiny. So like sports and all those things were not an option for me. I better kept my head in the books because it wasn't. I wasn't one of the kids who said I'm going to go to the league. It was clear that I was not. Couldn't catch, couldn't shoot, couldn't do any of those things. So doing well in school was really important for me. Coming out of this middle school, all of the students either they went to the best high schools in Cleveland. So either went to the best public schools, went to the best Catholic schools, or they went to the best private schools. And I didn't want to go to a public school because I knew that the chances of me being successful after high school were lower if I went to a Cleveland public school. I didn't want to go to a Catholic school because those were, a lot of them were really known for their sports. And again, that was not my forte. So I knew that I should just go to this private school. I get a high quality education. It's not going to be focused on sports. And so I made good grades, and I did not get to go to that school in ninth grade. And that was when I realized that it wasn't just based on the grades that I made. There were some other things going on that would determine which pathway I was on. So I did go to a public high school in the ninth grade year, and then I transferred to that private high school for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And it was there that I realized that, okay, when I was at the public school, right, I had great teachers who like cared about me, who were trying their best. I had classmates in my classes. We were all trying to learn and do the best that we could. When I got to that private school, I realized, okay, something's a little different here. So my family, they told me, hey, you're going to be going to one of the best schools around. This school was 28.9 miles away from my house. I had to ride a yellow school bus, get on the school bus at 6 to get to school at 7:45 every day. It would take me an hour and a half to get home too, because it was past different suburbs outside of Cleveland. And my family said, you're going to be around the best and the brightest minds. And when I got there, I realized that the kids weren't any smarter than me or any smarter than any kid that I ever gone to school with. It's just that they had resources that we never had. They had tutors in every subject. They were able to take these trips and these experiences out of the state, out of the country. But then the thing that really hit me, there were two things that really hit me at that school that my public high school did not have. One, right, there was soap in the bathrooms. Something as simple as soap and paper towels. And I just realized this is just a different set of resources where you have soap and paper towels in the bathroom. And I think about that now. I'm like, that's crazy, but we didn't have that at the public school. And the second thing is, I remember vividly in ninth grade English, Ms. Cofer was guiding us through a reading of Dracula, and she had we were reading photocopies of the Dracula book, and I flipped it over. Said, how much does this cost? And the book cost $3.99, and she only had one copy of a $3.99 book, and she had to make copies for the rest of it. And I go to this private school, and every kid at the school had a book that they had bought on their own, and they would just leave the books around. And no one used the locker. And so I couldn't afford to buy books. I would just borrow anyone's book because no one cared that I was using their book for class. And that was when I realized there's just a drastic difference in resources. And it has nothing to do with how hard a kid is working or how smart a kid is. It's based on resources. And of course, in Cleveland, that also meant the color of your skin. And that was when I realized in high school that something about the system is not working out the way that folks say it's supposed to work. And I want to do something about that.
It's amazing how, first of all, your story rings true with me, just in that having been in a lot of different schools every year of my own school life, I was able to see the differences. I remember being young enough to be like, I'm not dumb. I'm looking around seeing what different schools have. Having went to schools in New Orleans, Minnesota, and California. And they couldn't have been more different. They were on totally different planets because the New Orleans schools was deep south. That was, I mean, you had what you had. And a lot of times it wasn't a lot. And then I got to see what kids in California, for instance, had. in some of the better schools. And like you, it was an awakening. Like, damn, this has nothing to do with, like, I started thinking about all my old friends at my school in New Orleans, my schools in New
Yeah,
Orleans, thinking, damn, if they could only see this stuff, right? Like that they
yeah,
have here.
yeah.
But how did that mess at all with like your self confidence about what you could still do yourself, how much agency you still had, and how much you could learn?
Oh, the exact opposite.
Mm, mm-hmm,
Because when this happened, I was 14, and 14-year-olds, you think you're
mm-hmm,
invincible. Nothing can phase you. So when I was 14, I said, I'm going to change this. No other kid is going to have to go through what I have to go through. Now, I'm a little more senior, and I realized if I could just put one tiny dent in this issue, then I have, hopefully God will say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Um, but when I was 14, I didn't want any kids to have to go through what I had to go through. I didn't want any kid, to grow up homeless. I didn't want any kid to, try the hardest in school, only to realize that they wouldn't get the reward that they thought that they would get. I didn't want any kid to realize that they had busted their butt and that they were just too poor to reach certain opportunities. I didn't want any kid to realize they had busted their butt and they would just realize, okay, they're too black to reach certain opportunities. I didn't want any of that to happen. So at 14, it's like, okay, um, I don't want to do it this way. Um, I'm going to be successful in my own way. So I stopped making straight A's. I stopped making straight A's because I did a calculation that it wasn't worth the work that I was putting in, and I needed to well round myself in other type of ways. Um, so I started getting involved in community organizations. I started to start some community organizations, and I knew that in my locus of control was that school. So if I can change the way that school thought about diversity, thought about poor black kids like me, then that was my first step. So from there, I started a clothing drive for homeless families that I think may even still happen to this day. I also co-led with another one of my classmates. We brought a diversity training day to the school,
I mean,
and
so you're seeing
that day,
yourself as a leader at this point. You're at this point you have enough agency to
mhm.
not just do for yourself, but you're also seeing yourself as a leader.
Yeah, but I wasn't thinking about it as a leader.
Mm,
I was thinking about it as I am in this unique opportunity. No one has gone through what I've gone through. No one shares the shared experience of how these two worlds look. So it's up to me to like stand on a mountaintop and just make sure everybody knows what it's like in both of these worlds because they're colliding for me. I'm not going to hold that inside. I'm gonna let
mm,
everybody
mm-hmm.
know, and I'm gonna let everybody know what the issues are so we can work on fixing them. And that was different. Um, and I didn't want to take the same path that everyone else had taken because for my very narrow-minded, 14, 15-year-old view, the paths that other folks had taken hadn't led to anything.
It
So I
seems
was,
like that was part of your
yeah,
mom's strategy was pointing
hmm
that out to you too, was
yeah,
to say, you see where different people are ending up. Like it's up to you to decide whether or not, especially when you were living in neighborhoods that had fewer resources, where people had resigned themselves to being poor in some ways. Your mom was telling you, this isn't inevitable. You don't have to do this, live this way. As a matter of fact, it sounded more like she was telling you, you're not going to be
well,
like this.
she was she was very open about her struggles. So she said very clearly, she said, "This is this is what I struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
These are the
Mm-hmm.
mistakes I made." She gave a choice. She gave a choice, same choice to me that she gave to my sisters. And I think she takes a lot of pride in the fact that she gave us the choice, and she like pointed out the pathways. So she said, "It is your choice on how you live your life, but know what the consequences are."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like I said, when I was 5, we were walking home from school, and she stopped me at the corner and she said, "Look around." And I looked, and I saw a broken down house. I saw guys hanging out in the corner. And she said, "If this is what you want, if you want to keep living like this, then don't do anything. Basically, if you want something better, you got to do something better." And she would always, I hated this question when I was younger, um, but she wouldn't let me get away with anything without making sure I had a reason for it. She would tell me there's a reason for everything. There's a reason for everything. So, that was the mom thing she did to kind of instill that in me, to always look for a reason for something. She was constantly pushing me to understand. And she did not have a lot of resources, right? Um, she didn't. But what she tried to do was she tried to put me in the best school she possibly could, so that she could give me the resources.
You know what's interesting though, when you say that about she didn't have a lot of resources, in reading the story, it just felt like she was finding every resource that she could. She didn't have traditional resources
Yeah.
that people have for their kids, but I just so resonated with the story. I can remember my oldest. I looked for every free thing we could possibly do,
Yep.
and we were at every one of those things.
Every single one. Every single one. Every single one. And they knew her. And my mother continued to do this when I was in college. She did it with my younger sisters. So at the library, they they knew my mother and they knew my sisters, and she would always take us to the best library because, of course, the library that was closest to us was not that great. So she would go to the library in the suburbs, and we had a library card there, and that's where we would just hang out. And we wouldn't always get books, right? We would get
Hmm.
movies because they had the best movies at the suburban library. But it was the activity of going there, of establishing that reading is important for us, um, of forcing us to read even when we didn't want to read. She set us on that path.
You know what's so
Um,
interesting about that? I want my listeners to hear, because in this story, this is one of my favorite stories that I've read or I've talked to anybody about because it so resonates with me. When people say that education is a public good, the economic kind of definition of a public good is something that is non-rivalrous, meaning it's a service that we all get the same amount of. And if I take some of it, it doesn't take away from you having it too. So I always want to correct even educated people that public education is not a public good. It is actually rivalrous, meaning you have to live in a certain neighborhood to get this school or that school,
mhm,
but the libraries are a public good in that. I remember when my oldest, who's 30 now, just turned 30 last month, when it was me and him, like it was with you and your mom, you could go to any
mhm.
expensive library, the college libraries even. We went to some fabulous libraries outside of our neighborhood, and it gave him this world of wonder, like anything's possible in here. I love our libraries. I had to stop just to make that pitch and say I love our library system, and it didn't cost us anything. As a matter of fact, even if we bumped up against some fees every now and then, librarians were totally cool. They were just like, wipe it
Yeah.
away, you know. Um, I'm interested in. Oh, you developed a sense of agency through all of this, and you said at 14, even when you encountered a problem, you still felt a bit invincible and all that. The things that we hear about now that you're an educator and you're older, and can reflect things that we hear about, like with stereotype threat with testing, or acting white, or any of the stuff that we study as people, in education studying folks. How did you sidestep all of that? How did you never have like stereotype threat when it came to testing, for instance, or the acting white syndrome? Or did you? Did you encounter that yourself?
So it was. So I was an interesting kind of mixture of a little boy. Um, Whereas I did have those things. Um, at the end of the day, right? I was I was still I was still a little black boy from the hood, right? So I still like I had that, especially in high school. I had that bravado, right? I'm listening to 50 Cent every day,
Mm.
you know, uh, and I'm not going out and hanging out on the streets with that. My mother would have killed me if I tried. I was taking that same bravado, and I was bringing it into my field. My field wasn't the basketball court where I was going to talk trash. My field was the classroom where I knew no one could touch me, or where I felt like no one could touch me. And also, I thought that at that point, right, I was like, I've been homeless. Um, that was tough. I grew up without childhood friends besides my family members, my cousins, right? That was tough. Uh,
Mhm.
when I was in high school, right, I got jumped and almost killed, and the ambulance had to come and scrape me off the ground. I've been chased home and had bottles and things thrown at me. So when it came to me to come to school, that wasn't scary.
Hmm.
You weren't going to tell me anything or worry me when I had my life threatened. I had my livelihood threatened, right? When I was going to school and running organizations and also working a job because my mother had lost her job. When I was on the bus back and forth because we didn't have a car, and I was coming home at 11 o'clock at night and getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning again. In high school, these things weren't an issue for me in the same way because I put them in perspective. Um,
So to
and
sit
it was
down and
more,
take a
yeah,
test wasn't the type of thing where it shook you because you had other things going on that shook you
I
way
had
worse. So taking a
I
test
had real
wasn't the
problems.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I had real problems. And it was something I had to work through as a leader of a school. It's something I had to work through because based on folks would hear my story, and there actually was a part of my leadership where folks heard my story and they were worried that I was too traumatized to lead them.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and because people were like, "You're not traumatized by this." I'm like, "I'm not traumatized by this at all. This is my normal.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't tell me that I'm traumatized by it because this is my normal." But I did the part that I did have to work through was that I didn't have as much empathy for how people would react to certain other things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I had been through so much, and what I had been through had made me so strong and made me just be able to adapt to certain things. I did have to learn that. But when it came to stereotype threat, I definitely did not have that when I was in high school. Um, as when I got to college,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, that's when imposter syndrome started to ring loud and true.
So how do you
That's when I
get to
yeah.
college? So just for people, listening and anybody who's just joined, we start out in the early days. It's you and your mom, and
Mhm.
you are having to do shelters and move around a bit. So you're going to different schools. You're having to create different friendships each year. But the one thing that's consistent is that your mom is telling you all the right things around you have a choice in life.
Mhm.
She's putting you in environments rich with colors and words and text.
Mhm.
She's introducing you to all these things. She even takes a job at Head Start where you're going, and she's mimicking some of their work at home. So
Mhm.
you've got this good start. She's also closing the belief gap for you early, which is what I think we should do for kids. Don't close the belief gap before it even starts. No, you can
Mhm.
learn or whatever. You
Mhm.
will, right? So all of that happens and you're resilient in a way. Like at 14, you're still so resilient even when you're introduced to a private school, culturally different, maybe cultural shock or whatnot. You not just survive it, but you see yourself as able to still lead. Even you create an organization and you're doing. But now tell me about how you transition from all of that K-12 life. How do you, first of all, how do you get into Harvard? Like, how's that happen?
Uh, prayer.
Everybody listening right now, just so you know, this is the secret. Harvard is
just
prayer.
just pray. So the funny thing about it is, when I was 8, that was the first time I heard about college, and the first time I heard about college was Harvard. It was the number one. I was 8. I said, okay, I want to go there. It's the best school. I want to go there. That's for the high school. And I still didn't know anything about college, but I always knew it was the number one. I'm like, I want to go there. I was too naive to know how difficult that was, how
Mm-hmm.
crazy that is to just
Mm-hmm.
think that you would go there. I didn't know enough about college or the college process to even fathom that. I just knew that I could do it because I just didn't know enough. Um, Here's what happened. I talked to my college counselor. She looked at my grades, and she said, "Your GPA is too low for Harvard. It's a reach school. You should apply to some other schools, um, particularly in Ohio school." I told her if I had to go to school in Ohio, I wasn't going to school. I'm going to Harvard. Um, Again, this sounds crazy to me now, but I really believed that I can get into Harvard. I really believed that that was the school I was supposed to go to. And I applied. Um, and then I got an email back. So I applied this year, and it was junior year. And junior year, my mother was not working. So essentially, our only income was the money that I was making from working at McDonald's and a baby shoe store, Stride Right, and from the child support checks my father was sending me, and I did have a relationship with my father, so anyway he would help out. And when they took up a collection plate for us at church, that was our income.
Wow.
And so Harvard emailed me back and they said, hey, we have some questions about your financial package, about your financial information. So my pastor, we've been at that church for a few years. My pastor at the time, he helped me craft the email back to them, which is basically said, everything is accurate. This is all the money we had. Because they basically emailed us back like, we don't really understand how someone can live off of this. And we're like, yeah, welcome to our life. And from there, I got a full ride because that was really all I could afford. Someone who had a relationship with one of the shelters I went to donated a laptop. People gave a gift so I can have a little spending money when I went off, and that was how I got into Harvard.
It's amazing how many adults are working in your life, though, at that point in your ecosystem of adults to do their part, like to make it happen.
My mother was really good. If she didn't know something, then she would connect with someone who did, or she would make me connect with someone who did. So it wasn't, at that point in my life, it wasn't, oh, go talk to Bishop about this. It was, she was like, she didn't say, I'm going to talk to Bishop about this. She said, Jarell, go ask Bishop for some help.
She'd have you do it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you're taking the lead on it.
Really high bar. Yeah, she had a high bar. If I needed something, she's like, you need a ride? Go call them and get a ride. She didn't do it for me.
Well, at what point then in all of this do you decide that it sounded like you said earlier that you decided early on that you wanted to change the game for others too. Like you wanted to change things for other kids. But at what point do you decide that education is going to be one of your pathways to making that happen? Like you're going to be an educator?
Yeah. So in high school, I just didn't know enough about the problem to try to unravel it and see where I could best make an impact based on how I'm shaped and based on, what God has destined for my life. When I got into college, I studied sociology and African American studies. And that was when I got a lot more information about the problem. I always loved to work with kids. So I was also working with kids too, through community service programs throughout the year and over the summer. And that was when I thought, okay, I think I want to work with kids. There was the summer job you get between junior and senior year. That's the big one. That's the one that you come back, especially at Harvard, right? You come back with a full-time offer because that was the bar. That was what was expected. And so I remember to this day, there was a guy at Harvard Kennedy School who I knew named Michael Horn, and he sat me down and he said, hey, I need to tell you about this program. And there was another woman who was a senior, Monique Wilson. She said, I need to sit you down and tell you about this program. And they both told me about this summer teacher fellows program where I can go and I can teach and I can give back at the same time that I'm helping kids learn. And when I got my first taste of like actual teaching through this program, that was when I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't know how long I would be a teacher, but I knew that was the point in time where I get to work with students who look like me, who come from the same background as me, and I can help them understand what they're capable of and also help them develop concrete skills so they can start to change the world in their own way. My mother wanted me to be a lawyer, a doctor, or something like that. Something that made a lot of money. But I decided to go into teaching because I really wanted to just create the best impact for kids that I possibly can.
It's such a tough story with you though, in that, like a lot of our parents do want a doctor or a lawyer. And if you're going to listen, if we're getting you all the way to Harvard and you're getting there and going to go through, man, our hopes are up, our dreams are up that, man, you could do anything at this point. So to say that you want to be an educator or a teacher, which has always been respected in the Black community as a role.
Yeah,
So let's just put it that way. It's not like you're talking about you want to be like a hustler of some sort,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
still kind of like, I mean, what we wish for. Um, we doctor, lawyer, dentist, the same set of things that have been stereotypes. Michelle Johnson in the comments asked, how did the private school experience prepare you for Harvard in terms of like writing skills, communication skills, critical thinking, some of those things?
Oh yeah. So okay, the private school was when I first found out that I wasn't a good writer. That was the very first time. And I would, get feedback on my papers, and they were just never good enough. So they started to teach me how to write in a way that academia wanted me to see. But okay, so the way it really prepared me for Harvard, I got to break down the way I saw Harvard. So I think a lot of people think about preparation in terms of like, was I academically prepared? Could I do the work? X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. Harvard has Harvard had a lot of resources for that. You can do tutoring, there are study guides, you can like do study groups and stuff like that. I wasn't worried about the rigor of the work. Um, there's another part of Harvard that I don't think a lot of people understand is that Harvard has every single resource you could possibly imagine. So if you have a vision for something or if you have a passion for something, you can go and make it happen. And that was what I appreciate the most about my private school because it set me up for that, for what I would do outside of the classroom, for how I was already starting organizations, building relationships with professors, building community relationships before I graduated high school. So when I got into college, it was nothing for me to email a professor and say, hey, I would like to meet with you to talk about this. It was nothing for me to email the dean. There were racial issues that happened on campus at Harvard, where just like they happen on campus at every PWI, and I wanted to do something about it, and I didn't feel any type of way about emailing the dean and say we need to do something about this, which seems kind of audacious now, but the private school helped set me up for that, making me think that I can talk to anyone about anything, and I carry that on from Harvard, where that's the same mentality that I have, that I can command an audience with anyone and explain my vision to them, and we can talk about it, and we can work on something, and we can build something. So it's just that the idea of possibility, and then the critical thinking of the debates with the classmates as well. Yeah.
Part of this sounds like, like you understanding how to use resources and find the resources. And in private school, you mentioned earlier that like it was very clear that everybody had a copy of a book versus your public school experience where the teacher had one copy and had to run off copies. So once you get accustomed and used to the resources being there, then the next level of skill is knowing how to access them and use them. Like just they're there for you. So to use them and take them. But looking back, do you think that there was a different expectation or grade for just the writing skills? Let's take that. You said it was the first time your papers came back with some serious critical feedback. Was there like a night and day difference between the standard that you were held to in the private school versus if you had stayed with public schools or went to your closest public high school?
That's a really good question. So the best way to put this is, the rigor of my ninth grade honors classes was the rigor of a regular class at the private school. Because I went to that gifted and talented middle school, I'd already taken a bunch of high school prerequisite classes. So when we were, and I say we because there was a group of 5 of us that came from the middle school together. We were in, ninth grade geometry. We were in ninth grade geometry honors with sophomores and juniors, right? So it's interesting now that I reflect on it now, because I never thought about this before. I never thought about the rigor thing. It was just ninth grade. I wasn't really thinking about that, but we had classes with upperclassmen. So in ninth grade, I didn't see a rigor difference, right? But maybe if I was there in junior, senior year, what would that have looked like? that's the question that I don't have an answer to.
And if you hadn't been in honors all along, or in, I just wonder, like your mom did all this work throughout all your life to do blocking and tackling to get you into this school or into that program or whatnot. And if that meant that year by year you were being exposed to just a little bit higher level of standard in terms of rigor and
Mm-hmm.
all those things, even if you didn't know it. And what happens to the kid who's just like you, knows exactly the same things that you know and has the same potential, but was not on that track of always having to block and tackle, go left or right to this school or that school, but just stayed with what was handed to them and went through
Yeah,
straight up the middle? Maybe they don't end up so well.
that's one of the two reasons why I'm the principal of the school. Is one for those kids who who have the skills, and traditionally people would say, oh, that kid is smart. I wanted them to get the resources, um, and do everything that they need, so they can go wherever they want and do whatever they want with their life. So the second reason why I opened the school is for the kid that people wouldn't say is smart, for the people who wouldn't say deserve the best school, because I want that kid and the other kid to both be looked at on the equal plane.
Mm-hmm. So you you do well through K-12. You go to Harvard. You do Harvard. You eventually you keep going because you got a master's degree. Like it's like you never stop pursuing education, and now you get into the KIPP system. Tell me what's like all of this. How does all of this inform you now as a person that KIPP would hire and would lead a school and found a school? How's your background kind of playing out in your philosophy of education for the kids that you educate now?
It's it's the first step. It's the first step. So I'm in the second year of my school. My school is a founding school, and every year I start my school in the same way by sharing my story. When I applied for this position, I shared my story. When I spoke to every teacher that came in, I shared my story. When I spoke to every family, I shared my story, because I wanted to make it clear to every single person. When I met community folks, I shared my story. I want everybody to know this, that yes, I went to Harvard, and yes, I wear a tie every single day, student tie. Um, and that is because I grew up as a homeless, poor black boy on the east side of Cleveland.
Mm,
And everything that I am bringing from that experience, I am pumping into that school for kids who come through the same situation that I came through. Because yes, I did that in Cleveland, but 3,000 miles away here in Chicago, the little black boy is going through the same thing. And that is completely unjust. So I start off every school year like that. I ground our teacher team in that at least once a month. Like, hey, y'all remember what this is about. But also I lead my school from a different way of like understanding like what it feels like to be one of those kids, because what gets lost in a lot of these education conversations. And I love listening to education podcasts, reading about education. I love doing that because I disagree with half the stuff most people say. Because I'm like, y'all are missing the big picture. You're missing the
yeah.
big picture is what is that kid experience?
Mm,
And we can hypothesize, we can philosophize about everything that they're thinking. But at the end of the day, like, what is this kid going through? And folks don't know that. And I know that.
mm-hmm,
I lived
mm-hmm,
that. And I lived through that. And I also got to go to Harvard. It's crazy.
mm-hmm,
And then I, taught in some of the best schools in Brooklyn, some of the best schools in Jersey I worked in. And then now I'm here in Chicago. So I'm bringing all those experiences together and trying to say, okay, this is what it looks like in the school. So yes, at our school, it is very important that we have strong academic results. Don't tell me that the test is not important. The test is important because it measures
mm-hmm,
outcomes for kids. And if you have a problem with those outcomes, then let's look at how we're teaching it. And I make that clear as day to all my teachers, and we all know it's important. Kids got to learn how to read, but it doesn't stop there. Like we have to create an environment for kids to build social emotional skills. Why? Because things are crazy right now in our world. In order to navigate that world, like, kids are gonna need to know about themselves, right? Reflect on their feelings, navigate society, navigate how society is gonna teach little black and brown boys and girls. They gotta know how to do that. but that's not enough. So don't just tell me you want school where that's the only thing we focus on, because kids got to learn too. They got to learn. They got to learn about themselves. Then the third piece is they have to develop critical consciousness to disrupt and dismantle systems of racism and oppression. Because as I have found my role now as a school leader is, yes, this is how I'm living out my 14-year-old vision starting the school. But what that means is, for me, it's not about me dismantling these systems. It's about me setting up the kids to dismantle the systems. And I didn't wait till I was 18 to start disrupting. So I don't think my 5-year-old should either. And they have ideas and they have thoughts and they have things that they can put together, and things that they can start to work on now, because that's going to help shape them. So we have a 3-pronged head, right? Academic results, social emotional learning, critical consciousness. And that's what we do at our school. And it's based on my life experience, where I come from, the research I've done, the experience that I have. And that's what we really try to get to.
That's so deep, though. I mean, like, I rarely hear of all of those together.
Exactly.
Like you'll
Yep.
find school A will say, we're so about social emotional learning. And you're like, yeah, but the learning part doesn't seem to be happening. Like,
Yeah.
or another one where, we're about the critical consciousness. We're going to have the kids study their oppression and blah, blah. And you're like, how are they going to study it if they're not learning to read? Or we have the folks who do the first one, academic results, but your kids all come out not knowing themselves in some kind of
Mhm.
way, or being able to understand their struggle. Man, so those three that you just mentioned, let me see if I got them right. So the academic results,
Mhm.
critical consciousness, and social emotional learning, are those your addition to the school that you're leading, or is that part of the KIPP overall model?
That was a great question. How deep do you want me to go here? Um,
I want to know the truth. Is this something you're bringing to the table with them, or is this, if like, being uninitiated in KIPP world? Like,
mhm,
I was on a KIPP board. I should say that once, but I
mhm.
actually never did really learn an awful lot about whether or not what we were doing in our school was us, or whether it was part of the larger network.
So let me start at the end. Uh, at the end is, I am at KIPP right now, and I'm at KIPP right now because, um, as an educator, I believe this is the best place for me to be able to get done the things that I believe need to get done. This organization, KIPP Chicago, is aligned to my vision. They give me the freedom to do what I need to do. They hold me accountable to do the things that I said I was going to do, because it's important that I'm held accountable, right? Because there are kids that need to learn in my school. So the reason why I started at the end is because I want to make it clear that I chose to work with KIPP, for a reason. Uh, so to answer your question, uh, KIPP has been around for 20 something years, right? KIPP is not known for doing all three of those things. I think somebody
Mm-hmm.
just put it in the comments right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
KIPP is evolving. So the reason why I joined KIPP, reason why I respect the organization, because, right, it says, yeah, we don't do this that well, and it says, okay, we can evolve, we can learn, we can grow, and it's been open to listening. When I first started my career, I worked at Uncommon Schools. Uncommon is really strong, right, at training teachers and getting high academic results. But there were some things that they didn't do well. I moved to Achievement First. Achievement First has incredibly strong systems. There were some things that didn't do well, right? But I did learn, you know, strong academic results and teacher training from Uncommon. I learned strong systems from Achievement First. I moved to New Jersey when I first joined KIPP. And when I joined KIPP, the thing that I appreciated about the organization was, they were like, okay, they're like, hey, your young leader, we see some potential in you. These are the things you need to work on. Here's how we can develop you. Then I'm like, okay. Then I said, okay, I see some areas in this organization that need to work on. And then there was the space for me to do that work. So I worked with a number of APs at KIPP schools across the country. We really pushed organizational equity, and there have been some sizable movements along that way. When I joined KIPP Chicago as a school leader, I have a lot of flexibility in what I do and what happens at my school, and I'm able to just make that happen. And my superintendent, my ED, they give me the space I need to work, and I do it.
You know, I got a comment here from Mama Toya, who is one of our most dedicated um, 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 den mothers of the unpublic world and of Eight Black Hands and all of this education work that we do in terms of like setting up networks and meeting people like you,
Mm-hmm.
staying in contact, helping us exchange information, bringing new things to the table. And she asked the question, she said to ask you about the new mission and vision at KIPP. I want to ask it in this frame though, because
Mm-hmm.
it's come up a couple of times in education commentary world. I
Mm-hmm.
even wrote a piece about it. So on the conservative side of the fence, there are people who have written stuff about how KIPP has given up. They've started teaching kids that hard work doesn't matter anymore, and that the world is so terribly racist that you can never make it, and blah blah blah. So there's a legitimate group of people who are saying this about KIPP as a
Mm-hmm.
truism now. You gave up your motto, work hard, be nice. You're teaching kids that merit doesn't matter anymore. You're teaching them that racism is going to stop them from doing anything that they want to do in life, blah, 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 blah. I wrote back saying, I don't care what KIPP's motto is, as long as KIPP still focuses on academic results. So you can
Mm-hmm.
change your model to be anything. It could be like, eat vegetables, whatever you want to make it, as long as you're still doing the latter. Help me understand what the public doesn't really understand right now. You guys have this evolving model or slogan, mission, vision, value, or whatnot. Are you teaching kids that merit doesn't matter anymore?
Yeah. So, all right. First thing to say is that um, I think y'all talk about this a lot on your Black Hands too. Is that when folks say charter schools, one, folks like to lump charter schools all together. You cannot lump charter schools all together. They all are very different. And then the second thing about KIPP is when folks say KIPP, right? Folks got to recognize that every KIPP school is different. Every KIPP region is different. In terms of how they operate, in terms of what the community needs, and how that happens. So I can't really speak for KIPP as a whole. I can speak for my school. I can speak for a little bit about my region. Um, in 2016, when the group of us APs came together and we created a working group to really focus on equity at KIPP, one of the things that we talked about was the "Work Hard, Be Nice" slogan. And we were like, bunch of bull. Work hard,
Hmm.
be nice. Work hard, be nice is not what kids need to be successful in 2016, 2017, when it was. We're like, hey, when this first started, maybe that was cool. Maybe that was the thing. But right now, that's not the thing that kids need. Um, and that's what we talked about. And one of the recommendations that we talked about was we should get rid of this slogan. So now that kids got rid of it, right, that has made no difference to how I've run my school.
What made you guys say, this is not what kids need to know? Like, work hard, be nice. Seems simple. Seems, this is what, 4 words: work hard, be
Mm-hmm.
nice. Seems to encapsulate so much. What made you guys think that it was important to change that?
Yeah, because all right, for one, in the patriarchal society, right, if a woman is being nice, then she's going to get stepped on. She's not going to get equal pay. Like someone's not going to treat her the way she's supposed to do, right? In our racist society, if you're working hard, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you are still black, and they're going to still see you as black, and they still treat you as how they think black people should be treated. So work hard, be nice is not the thing, right? Personally, I don't care what the slogan is. I don't care what the slogan is. I'm more of like I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna set this up. So we have systems inside of our schools, so kids are learning at a high level. So kids are learning at a high level, and then from there, they learn what they need to do in order to drive themselves academically as a student. They also learn how to navigate society. They also learn how to treat people in an appropriate way. But if we try to sum it up as work hard, be nice, that is not accurate, and that is not going to set somebody else's success. And then we're going to have a bunch of little black and brown kids who are going to be just like I was when they're 14, and realizing, wait, you told me to work hard, be nice my whole life. That ain't what it is. That's not what was making people be successful. What's making people be successful is if they are rich. What's making people be successful is if they are white, growing up around all white people. What makes people be successful is if they have connections. It has nothing to do with work hard, be nice, because it just flat out doesn't. And I went to Harvard with people who were not working hard, who were not being nice. The president, is he still president now? But he is not working hard, being nice. So it's just not accurate. So it just doesn't make sense.
That is so deep. I went to Harvard with people who are not working hard and not being nice. And even our president is not working hard, being nice. I don't think that I could have written anything any better than that, because that is absolutely true. I was unclear on why changing the model was a big idea, but I was enough to say, to me, sometimes educated people, what you do is you say, being educated is I don't know everything. There are some things I just don't know. I don't know what's behind changing the model, but I just actually don't care if you keep producing results. If the kids learn to read and become numerate and critical thinkers in the world, you could call it whatever you want. You could do whatever you want. So when I just heard you just say just now, like, really, Chris, we changed the model, but it didn't change what I do in my school in terms of getting kids ready for the world, then I'm fine. Like, I'm cool with it. But I do think that the worry amongst people in the public was that there was going to be less of a focus on outcomes and academics, and things were going to start sliding, and kids were going to, like, everybody was becoming over woke. We're just going to become woke, super woke.
That's because people don't see the people don't see a dual world of that happening. People don't see how you can be woke and still drive towards results, right? Because you got folks who say, all right, if you understand the neighborhood that kids come from for poverty, then you understand why they can't do well on tests. I'm like, no, silly. Poor kids can learn, understand that they're poor and where they come from, but then also, like, teach them how to learn. And so, we don't have a national conversation that is complex enough to understand that you can hold two ideas in your head at once. People want simple solutions, simple answers, simple points of view. And I get arguments all the time. I mean, so at Harvard, all you do is debate. That's what we did. We debated, whether it was about, who's the best basketball player. We debated Lil Wayne lyrics, right? We debate, educational philosophy. And we would talk about the nuances of things. A lot like Abe like him, like, it's very nuanced. And you got to understand how these things happen. But that's just not what our conversation is.
I think it's kind of funny to think of y'all arguing about Lil Wayne at Harvard, but but okay, man, whatever works. Well, listen, man, you've been very generous with your time today. I actually want everybody to stay in touch with you and to track your work. And to talk to you more, to get you, your story is important. I think more people need to hear it and understand it. It's most important to me because of, I felt a lot like reading your mom's part of the story resonated with me as a parent. Like, we are trying so hard sometimes and doing things that people don't see and don't. We get criticized as parents for not doing all that we can, and people don't see that we're doing all that we can in some ways and shape. And I think that's important. And then your personal story, what you got out of it, and the agency, it's just amazing. I want people to see a little bit. I'm going to put this up so for people to see. Jarell's story is told in a book called The Formula by Ronald Ferguson and Tasha Robertson. And it's a book that highlights the secrets to raising highly successful children. It has the black box in it, the black box of information that a parent and adults in the lives of students can know and learn about, that can help produce a story like yours. Right? It doesn't mean that you're going to have a lot of money. Doesn't mean that you're going to have to, have all the information in the world, be the smartest person in the world. It just means that you're going to have to take some steps. You have to do some things. So I appreciate you, brother. Come back anytime. If you ever have anything else that you want to share in terms of a book or in terms of a new school, anything that you're doing, I want to see young folks getting this right who share the information with us, make us smarter about the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. A lot of
How
fun.
can people reach you too, by the way?
People can reach me. I'm Jarell Lee on Facebook, Jarell Lee on LinkedIn. My email address is jarell.lee@gmail. I'm on Twitter. I forget the handle. I never tweet.
All right.
I just like and retweet. By the time I
Yeah.
come back to Twitter after a long day, things have happened, so I always miss out. But those are the best ways to get in touch with me. And I love to talk to people, love to debate, love to engage, love to share resources and learn from what other people are doing.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. And for our watchers, our listeners, our viewers, our community, our family who are watching this, appreciate you for giving up a morning of your life to listen to inspiring stories about education. We have to stop focusing on failure as much as we focus on success, because we're learning more from success than we are from failure. And I think I may have said this to you in the run up to the show. We can say a statistic like 70% of black kids are not achieving X. But what eventually happens is we first of all, we don't ever ask the question of, well, what happened for the 30%? Like, what went right in their life? And then the second thing that happens is educational essentialism, which is our problem. We start thinking that the problem is so specific to the person that we might as well not even try to solve it. It's immutable. It's like genetic, or it's somehow like you can. Once you start thinking like that, and the system starts thinking like that, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We send in all our children to doom once we do that. So, thank you, brother. Appreciate you.